6 more levels. 6 more brutal levels of this. I kinda like the slime levels because they're not as crazy. Oh my goodness, never mind. Hello, Jelly here, and I'm also planning on beating every N64 game, using no guides and with the original hardware. On the previous episode, we got through a game everyone knows and loves, so make sure to check it out if you haven't already. On this episode, however, I'll be playing a game I knew next to nothing about.
Robotron 64.
Before I talk about the game, time for some context. Robotron 64 is a remake of an arcade classic called Robotron 2084, developed by Eugene Jarvis, Larry DeMar, and WizKids back in 1981 and released in 1982. I wouldn't blame you if you thought this game was the first twin-stick shooter. I know I did before making this video. It did, however, popularize the genre. Hell, Jarvis made a little game you might know called Smash TV that uses the near-identical control scheme as Robotron, so you can imagine more or less what to expect. But what does this have to do with Robotron 64? Well, Robotron 64, or Robotron X for the PS1, is a shiny 3D sequel to the original game. And I really didn't talk about the story itself because yes, Robotron has lore. Robotron 64 and the original have essentially the same story.
In 2084, inspired by his never-ending quest for progress, man perfects the Robotrons, a robot species so advanced that man is inferior to his own creation. Guided by their infallible logic, the Robotrons conclude the human race is inefficient and therefore must be destroyed. You are the last hope of mankind. Due to a genetic engineering error, you possess superhuman powers. Your mission is to stop the Robotrons and save the last human family.
So that's it? Now you might be wondering, what's the clear goal for this one? Well, technically you can finish it by playing it on easy and beating level 100, but that's boring. To get the true ending, you must play on any difficulty above easy and beat level 200, so that's what we're gonna do. The first 30 to 50 levels or so are very uneventful, so let me begin by explaining the gameplay and what to expect for the most part. By the way, I managed to game over in less than 10 levels on our first playthrough because I kept running into these tiny mines thinking they were power-ups. The objective of each level is to take out all of the robots, all while attempting to save the humans that run around before they're taken out by the robots. These humans are members of the last human family: mom, dad, kid, and grandpa. Guess grandma was already taken out off screen. There's no real penalty for having them die, as the only purpose of humans is to give us a higher score. The arenas are for the most part in the shape of a square, and for a short section they are even octagonal, and very often will have, as the manual calls them, electrodes littered around each stage. These are obstacles that can hurt you, but also the robots. It is possible to lure robots near these electrodes to defeat many at once, but honestly, very quickly you'll realize that the game gets so chaotic that there is no real time to strategize these kinds of things. Now for the controls. You move around with the analog stick or D-pad and shoot with the C-buttons. It is also possible to use two controllers for a more authentic twin-stick shooter sort of control scheme, but at the time of playing this I only had one controller. Oh well. You can also change the camera angle with the L and R buttons, but honestly the other camera angles just make things way harder than they should be. Not long after I began, I realized that if you mash two directions you can shoot extremely fast and cover a lot more of this stage. This right here was the end of me, as I had no idea how long it was actually going to take me to finish this game, and by the end my forearm was on fire from 4 straight hours of endless button mashing. To make your life a bit easier while you play, you can get different power-ups. Some of them make it so you can shoot in multiple directions at once, letting my wrist rest for a bit. The other power-ups are things like extra guns and speed boosts, a shield, the usual kind of stuff. Alright, let's talk enemies now. Every few levels, a new enemy type gets introduced. At first, you'll start fighting what the game calls grunts. They all get one-shotted and get faster the longer you stay alive. Alongside these grunts, you also have hawks. These are unkillable and work more as obstacles, as they are not directly chasing you. They are the only ones that can take out the humans running around as well. They can be very annoying, especially on later levels, where they also start shielding enemies that spawn, making it very easy for you to get overwhelmed. Another enemy type that is very high priority target is what it's called the spheroid, which are basically floating discs that can spawn another enemy type called enforcers. Usually they'll spawn in packs of about 2 or 3, and you must make sure to take them out ASAP, as they can make a bad situation even worse by constantly spawning annoying enforcers to get you. The later versions of it not only spawn tougher enforcers, but are tankier and move fast as hell. The next enemy type is a tank. These are slow as well, behave like tanks, and are a bit, well, well, tanky. They shoot projectiles. The projectiles can also be destroyed, so I would say these are also a priority target, a bit less so than spheroids. Later versions of the tank have homing missiles, and the last variation spawns a bunch of tiny robots that are extremely hard to see in the middle of the chaos. You can argue that these versions are probably even higher priority than the spheroids. After that we got brains. These are interesting as the earlier types can, as the manual puts it, reprogram humans. However, I never even noticed this in gameplay. I learned about this as I was reading the game's manual while writing the script. Later versions of the brains, aka broccoli heads, also reprogram humans and can also shoot poison waves at you. These are stupidly tanky and are the highest priority when they are around. They're constantly shooting projectiles at you. Also turns out the slime enemy are brains too, but these just shoot poison and are pretty slow and weak. Finally, we've got the nanobite, the dinobite, and the ants. These are quite frankly not worth mentioning as I never felt they gave me any trouble. Ants replace grunts for a handful of levels, so they are basically the same thing, just insecty. And before I forget, there's also a magic grunt that rarely spawns that upon dying will spawn a teleporter. This teleporter can help you skip between 1 and 5 levels, and by the end I was begging to see this thing show up. Editing jelly here. I forgot about the quarks. They're these UFO looking thingies. They fly around, they're very annoying, and they spawn tanks. Kill on sight. The first 100 levels of the game are not that crazy. It mostly introduces enemy types at a steady pace and levels don't take that long. Levels 90 to 100, the game started to turn up the heat, but it still felt manageable. Level 99 was a gigantic gauntlet that was a sneak peek of what was coming in the next set of 100 levels. Once you reach level 100, you find the first boss, the Yellow Guardian. Honestly, thing is easy. Enemies spawn, but in the same rate as previous levels. After some shooting, we eventually take him out and start what will prove to be the craziest ride form workout of my life. So, as long as I don't pass... What is this, man? This is like This is an acid trip. Before talking about what's coming my way, I want to talk about the music. I've always been an electronic music fan, and this game's soundtrack is right up my alley. Especially the more gabber sounded tracks. It adds to the absolute chaotic nature of the game, and at least for me, it helps a lot in being able to just lock in and get through the levels. Generally speaking, the higher the tempo, the more chaotic the levels will be. It was easy for me to know that when this song was playing, because they just keep spawning little guys, dude. I cannot focus on the big guys like this. Oh my god. Or this song. Uh-oh. The Yellow Guy Fiesta. My wrist was going to cramp. And here I was, thinking how I was going to easily zoom past the next 100 levels. And man, I was so wrong. The first few levels after level 100 are surprisingly chill. We're introduced to some new enemies, and levels are about the same length as the previous one. However, as you get around level 130, the game decides the fun is over, and some of these levels are just made for you to die over and over in. So you better have stocked on extra lives because you will start bleeding them fast. Remember how I mentioned grunts get faster the longer you're alive for? Well, this is now a gigantic issue because you're being constantly swarmed by endless amounts of grunts for what seems like forever. These levels go on for such a long time that my wrist was really not happy about it, just so you know. I was starting to get worried that the lives I had gathered were not going to be enough. I was dying up to 5 times per level and it was getting very scary. I did not want to start from the beginning after all the wrist pain I've been through. The waves I died the most in are those that throw both the flying and tanky grunts at you. It just kept going. I persevered and reached the final 10 levels. These levels are just insane. The amount of crap the game throws your way is unreal, but knowing that I was so close to the end helped me push forward. My forearms were almost cramping at this point. It's time for level 200, we're at the end. And we fight the same boss but in another color. The strategy is the same, the only difference is that the enemies that will spawn are the ones that we've been fighting for the previous 100 levels. And with that, Robotron 64 has been beaten. Just look how relieved I was, jeez. Come on. Yes! It's over. It's over. It's over. Thanks to you and your superhuman whatever, the last human family, we'll see the year 2085. We saved them. Despite my constant whining about my wrist, I did have a lot of fun with this one. I don't think it was really made to be played in one sitting, as the game has a password system that you can use to play from where you left off. While the game itself is very samey, the challenges offered by each level make it so you at least have to improvise new strategies on the fly. I was completely in the zone for most of the playthrough, and to me that is something that only very few games manage to pull off. Oh, it's time for me to rate the game, right? After 200 levels of high BPM gameplay, Robotron 64 gets a wrist repetitive stress injury out of 10. And now it's time for the next game. What's it gonna be? I play every game live, and if you want to watch it, you can catch my stream over at twitch.tv/softjellyfish on Monday, Tuesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from around 7 PM Central European Time until 10 PM. And if you've enjoyed this video, feel free to like and subscribe as it helps the channel greatly, and finally, feedback is always appreciated. With that said, I hope you all have an amazing day. Thank you for watching, and take care.